Everyone has secrets. Some we keep from ourselves, some from people we love, and some we keep from the world. During a murder investigation, these secrets are what help detectives solve the crime. In June of 1978, television icon Bob Crane was found dead in his Scottsdale, Arizona apartment. His skull had been bludgeoned with a blunt object. An electrical cord had been tightly wrapped around his neck. No one knew who did it. No one knew why. There was no sign of forced entry and no indication of theft. Just the battered body of a 49-year-old man who lit up America's television screens with his witty, wartime banter during the 1960s. Almost immediately, the investigation went off the rails. The crime scene transformed into a gathering spot. Items were mishandled, evidence was overlooked, and authorities hastily tampered with the body. A killer was at large, and it didn't seem like the Scottsdale police were skilled enough to catch him. Meanwhile, Crane's death sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Who would want to murder the all-American sitcom star? They looked at his relationships. His first marriage to his high school sweetheart had ended in divorce. Together, they had 3 children. His second marriage was also reportedly on the rocks. Could Crane have been the victim of a crime of passion? But as detectives dug deeper into his lifestyle, sure enough, secrets emerged, and soon after, a likely suspect. Let's take a look. Bob Crane was originally a disc jockey in the early 60s on KNX in Los Angeles. Very popular. And what's really interesting is he was making $150,000 in 1965. That was a lot of money in 1965 for a radio DJ. Had a lot of celebrities on his show, and those celebrities being on the show got him guest spots because he was a good-looking guy, personable, funny. He was nice to be around. And so Donna Reed had him on the show, and he became a regular. Dick Van Dyke had him on the show, and all this led to an offer for his own sitcom, and it was called Hogan's Heroes. It is a sitcom about a POW camp in World War II where Hogan, Bob Crane, is the highest ranking POW, and then he makes fools out of all the German guards and commanding officer, and basically they're putty in his hands. It was a very funny show, and it lasted from 1965 to 1971. And then things kind of nosed over for Bob. He got some bit parts, and eventually he ended up in the dinner theater circuit. So that landed him in Scottsdale, Arizona in 1978. On June 29th, 1978, Bob Crane was found in his apartment by Victoria Berry. Victoria Berry was his co-star at the dinner theater, and he was supposed to have a luncheon engagement with her, so he was late. He didn't make that meeting, and so she went to his apartment. She knocked on the door. There was no answer. She tried the door, and it was unlocked, and she walked in, and it was completely dark. All the curtains were drawn. There was no light. She went to the sliding glass door and pulled the drapes back and got some light in the room, and when she cracked the door in the bedroom, she looked and she saw someone in bed, and it looked like there was a woman in bed with long dark hair. As the door opened farther, she realized it wasn't a woman, and the dark hair wasn't hair, it was blood, and it was Bob Crane. He was in a fetal position on his right side, and there was blood coming from visible wounds on the left side of his head, and the pillow was soaked with blood. And as she put it, there was blood everywhere. Well, there wasn't blood everywhere, but there was blood going up the wall in an arc where you could tell somebody had not only struck Crane once, but maybe 2 or 3 times, where the blood was on the weapon, and it actually created a cast-off pattern. She runs out of the apartment. She goes to a neighbor. She says, "I found somebody dead. I think it's Bob Crane." The police are notified. They respond. Barry remains in the apartment. You've got a lieutenant there. You've got at least 2 to 4 uniformed officers there. You've got EMS that's respond. The county coroner has responded. So much was done wrong in this case, it's hard to find anything done right. We have so many people in this small one-bedroom apartment, it would probably be too many for a party. And this is a fresh homicide scene. You have a victim that lives there that is dead. No forced entry, no property taken. The residence isn't ransacked. It's obvious that the person knew the victim. There are two methods of death. This is not a professional. They were struck in the head and obviously still alive, and an electrical cord is tied around his neck. At this point, the sheet is pulled up over the face and head. The suspect doesn't want to see the victim. There's a personal connection there. So the most obvious thing is, if somebody that knew Bob Crane is a suspect, you're allowing a next-door neighbor to be there. The lieutenant allows Victoria Berry to stay in the apartment and answer the phone when it rings. Has anybody dusted the phone for prints? No. The door that Victoria Berry came in, on the inside doorknob is blood. You do not have to be a detective to figure this out. The blood on the doorknob either is Bob Crane's or the suspect's. Is anybody preserving that? No. The coroner shows up and he immediately ingratiates himself to be in charge. He rushes to the body, inspects the body, then takes out a straight razor and shaves around the wound while he's still on the bed before they have taken any photographs, before they have processed any evidence or anything. This, for anybody that doesn't know, this is what you do at the autopsy. You don't do this at the crime scene. They saw dried white substance on his lower stomach, groin, and leg. One detective and/or officer says, maybe we should test whatever that is. And Dr. K, the elected coroner in the county, says, so we really cared if he got laid before he got murdered? Yeah, we do. So if that was semen on his body, when did that occur? He supposedly didn't have sex with the woman he took home, which you can verify. We know what the woman's name is. He left the dinner party theater show with his best friend, John Carpenter. He didn't go anywhere with the woman, didn't have sex with anybody. He dropped the woman off, went home. What's going on? It gets even worse after they remove the body. The remainder of the day, when they're processing the scene, Victoria Berry is there for at least 2, maybe 3 hours. She's answering the phone. Guess who calls? Bob Crane's best friend, John Carpenter. John Carpenter goes, what's going on? Is Bob there? No, can't tell you. Lieutenant takes the phone. He goes, can't tell you what's going on. A lot of cryptic stuff. He calls back at 3:30. I talked to Bob's son. What's going on there? What happened? Was there a robbery or something? So the lieutenant, in all of his expertise, says, that was just like the suspect returning to the scene of the crime he called. I don't know where he gets this stuff, but nothing he said sounded out of the ordinary, because people really don't know what to say when they're confronted with something on the phone. John Carpenter is talked to, and he said, well, last night I went out with Bob after the dinner show. This is important. After the dinner show, he is with Bob Crane. They talk to a couple of women they know, and they go out to have drinks. They split up at a point, and John Carpenter is trying to have sex with this woman but doesn't succeed and just takes her home. He calls Bob Crane back, it's about 2:45, and asks, did you get any luckier? And he goes, no, I just took her home. Then he says, you don't need to give me a ride to the airport. I'll get my own ride, don't worry about it. So this is what's going on between the police and John Carpenter. Could he be establishing his own alibi? Oh, absolutely. So the second day, it's still a sealed crime scene. The victim's son, the victim's manager, and the victim's attorney walk around, no hairnet, no booties on their feet, no gloves. They handled stuff, they walked around, and they were dropping fibers, hair, perhaps saliva, fingerprints, all over. Detective Vassell said in an interview, you don't want people to contaminate a scene, but in this instance, I don't think anything was contaminated. I don't think there was one spot that wasn't contaminated. The theory at the scene was pretty simple. He was killed by somebody that he knew, and the murder weapon was most probably a missing tripod that was used to strike him in the head. Can't disagree, can't agree. Nobody got a tripod of like make and model and compared it to the wound during the autopsy. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to try to replicate the wound on an animal skull, like a pig. If the strike is significant and it actually makes the same mark, you can probably conclude that this was most probably the murder weapon. They didn't do that. They also didn't look at the cast-off. It's obvious just from the pictures I've seen that the suspect was right-handed, and they were probably standing below or just to the left of the bed when they struck the victim. And what was the electrical cord? What was that about? There was barely any blood in his lungs. That means that probably the electrical cord was put on his neck perimortem or near death. But the suspect didn't know that the victim would die or is dead. So I think there's something going on there that is pretty obvious, that there was a relationship between the suspect and the victim, and that relationship went sideways. At the time of the police search of the residence where the victim was found, they found many pornographic videos, albums, photographs, and they finally realized what Bob Crane was into. So was John Carpenter. The son said Crane wanted to distance himself from John Carpenter. He was becoming irritating. And the night before and the previous days, he had shown John Carpenter a portfolio of Polaroids, pornographic and nude photographs of many of the people that were females in the theater group that he was traveling with. But they never found it. That is probably a clue that everybody in the dinner group should probably be interviewed and find out just exactly how many of those people had been to that apartment, what fingerprints were taken. Now they suspected John Carpenter, and we have to look at the fingerprint specialist, who was told, go in there and process the crime. We just need to know if John Carpenter's prints are there. So the fingerprint specialist goes in and he takes prints until he gets a print that was John Carpenter's. How he determined that, I have no idea. The long and the short of it is, we had no crime scene by the time they were done. The body was telling us nothing. They didn't worry about the time of death. And then, of course, we find out that Scottsdale Police Department didn't have a homicide unit. In fact, they really hadn't been trained much in homicides. Well, somebody puts two and two together and says, well, what were you using for transportation while you were here? Where's your rental car? Well, I turned it in at the hotel. Well, when he turned it in, there was an electrical problem with the car, so instead of going back to the rental fleet, it went to be repaired. So 24 hours after the first day at the homicide scene, they acquire the car. They look at the car in an impound lot, and they find blood smears, a small linear line, and a blood smudge on the passenger door panel. Impound the vehicle and bring it to the police station so we can forensically look at it. There is nothing I can find that they printed the vehicle to see whose prints are on the steering wheel, whose prints are on the shift handle, whose prints are on the door on the driver's side, whose prints are on the right side, whose prints are in the vehicle at all. Remember, it was sent in to be fixed. Did the person that worked on it cut themselves? Did they have a previous cut? Were they wearing any Band-Aids? Was there anything going on where they could have actually left that on the door? The blood in the door was type B, so was Bob Crane's. So now the prosecutor considering this case goes, okay, we have John Carpenter, last person to see Bob Crane alive, the last person supposedly that talked to him. There's a missing tripod, and in John Carpenter's car, there's a blood transfer that's the same type as Bob Crane, but we need a murder weapon. We can't arrest him. That's where it ends in 1978. So we fast forward 12 years. A detective that left the Scottsdale Police Department by the name of Jim Raines comes in, and just like in the movies, he's got all these boxes and he starts going through them. And lo and behold, when he goes through the crime scene photos, he sees a never seen before crime scene photo. Does anybody believe that? A never before seen crime scene photo? Really, they're numbered. And in that photo, there is a small piece of what appears to be human flesh on the same door as the door that has the blood smudges and the transfers. So what do you really have? Is this human tissue? Probably. They let 3 different medical examiners independently look at it. 2 said it's human tissue, obviously because of the skin and the hair follicles is not animal. And 1 said it even possibly might be some brain tissue. Interesting enough, but now that's on John Carpenter's car with the blood smudges. So what is somebody to conclude there? The blood smudges could have been somebody else's non-related to the crime, but now you have a piece of human tissue on the door. It would be pretty extreme to have these 2 things not related. They arrest John Carpenter. Well, the evidence is challenged, and a judge actually says it's admissible. How they can tell from a picture that it's human tissue, I don't know. Where's the human tissue? Not only did they not book the human tissue, I'm not sure they ever even saw it. Nobody remembers photographing it. They remember photographing the door, but they don't remember photographing the tissue. Nobody remembers collecting it for analysis, and it doesn't exist in evidence. Nonetheless, they go to trial. The prosecutor in the case, when he was trying to prosecute John Carpenter, said the blood that was seen on the door is because the suspect leaned the tripod on the door and it caused that blood transfer. I don't know, maybe I'm a little lame and naive, but I think if I have a murder weapon that's got blood in it, I probably might put it in the trunk. I don't know, call me crazy, but why would I put it in the passenger side of my vehicle? It makes no sense. And it's not even my vehicle, it's a rental car. I'm gonna turn it in. So nonetheless, they lost the case. John Carpenter's acquitted in 1994. 4 years later, he died. Fast forward again, 2015. John Hook is an investigative journalist in Arizona who was always interested in the Bob Crane case, and he felt that there was something that he could do on this case. In the trial in 1992, they tried to do DNA and it was inconclusive on the blood. Now, 2015, John Hook has got cooperation from the prosecutor's office and the police department to allow him a sample of that blood to have it independently tested by the best labs. John Hook has a big deal on TV. He's got Bob Crane's son there. He's got the jury foreman from the trial. He's got Detective Vassell, and he's got the prosecutor. And they're all sitting in a semicircle waiting for the results. Big drum roll, and he says, the blood sample is not Bob Crane's. In fact, we don't know whose it is. It's an unknown male contributor, and the other smudge is too degraded for analysis. So now we have John Carpenter's car with an unknown smear of blood, an unknown piece of human flesh, that could be brain matter on the door. It's not a furtherance of the case, it's actually gone in the opposite direction. So when you go back and you think, back in the 70s, a tripod for a camera was made out of metal, not plastic. Metal has sharp corners and surfaces. If somebody is using the force that was necessary to actually crack Bob Crane's skull and kill him with 2 or 3 blows with that, there's quite good possibility that the suspect actually injured themselves and cut their hand. They said at the crime scene that the suspect actually used the bed sheet to wipe off the tripod. If that is to be true, why is there blood on the doorknob where the suspect exited? Was it on his hand? And if he's right-handed, would it be his right hand? But how does it get in John Carpenter's car? So I thought about this and I said, there must be some telephonic search warrants. I know there's people watching this that have always had a cell phone, but back when we used to go dial phones in a little circle, you got a thing called a phone bill, and the phone bill would have all the calls you made. And if they're local, there was no charge. If it was long distance, there was a charge. So you always had a record of what that phone made a call to. So Bob Crane's apartment, that was a hard line. And that means a search warrant for that phone would tell you if anybody made a call out or one came in. Did a suspect make a call from that location? Did Bob Crane make a call to somebody from that location before or after he talked to John Carpenter? I can't find anything in the court records. I can't find anything that has been written. So just how does that blood relate to Bob Crane's homicide? Really, in the end, you can't say it does. You have no murder weapon. You have blood of an unknown male. It's not John Carpenter's and it's not Bob Crane's. So John Carpenter didn't cut his hand and leave blood on the door. And Bob Crane's blood wasn't on a murder weapon and transferred to the door. Is there a chance that that blood was on the door before John Carpenter rented the car? I don't know. So just exactly who killed Bob Crane? I don't think we'll ever know. And we won't know because they were really slick or they were really professional. We just won't know because the Scottsdale Police Department ruined a crime scene so totally, they concealed the evidence of the murder.